Well, I think the football world learned today you do not cross paths with Joe Judge. All right, welcome into a new episode of the Zero Technique Football Podcast. I'm your co-host Ryan Stern, and joined with me, as always, is Derek Mountain. How you doing tonight, Derek?
Good. I think I'm doing a little better than Marc Colombo right now.
My goodness. I mean, just when the Giants are coming off 2 wins, they're a half game out of first place. They're an Evan Ingram drop pass from being a game and a half in the lead of the NFC East. And now we get this fight between Joe Judge and Marc Colombo, and depending on which sources you want to believe or not believe, it either got physical or didn't get physical. The sources that I believe the most have said that they don't believe it got physical, but not what you wanted to hear as a Giant fan going into the bye, especially coming off of 2 wins and 2 clean games by your quarterback in Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I don't want to grossly exaggerate because you're the Giants fan, but I believe this 2 to 3 week stretch is the best I've seen the Giants O-line play in probably half a decade.
Yeah, and a lot of that has to God, I mean, look what Marc Colombo did with the Dallas Cowboys offensive line. Now, of course, he was blessed with a whole lot more talent on the Cowboys offensive line than he currently has with the Giants. But hey, with the lack of an offseason that he had and lack of training camp, and even in training camp, the lack of physicality that they were allowed to have, it was going to take a new offensive line coach, and with new talent, three new pieces on the offensive line, it wasn't going to click right away. And I mean, even in the game before, which was the game against the Eagles on Thursday night, that they started to look better that game. But a lot of, it's funny because they really started to look better when Will Hernandez went on the COVID list and they inserted Shane Lemieux, their 5th-round rookie, who a lot of Giants fans have been clamoring to play from before the season started. I personally thought that they were going to let him try out at center. I know he played guard throughout his entire career at Oregon, but he's an interior lineman, and I thought that, I mean, obviously Nick Gates has played much better over the past couple weeks, but Nick Gates is not the future at the center position for the Giants. But then when we saw Kevin Zeitler go down with a concussion during the game against the Eagles this week, they shifted Lemieux over to the right side and brought Will Hernandez back in. And to be honest, I actually think that's what gives the Giants their best offensive line combination.
Yeah, and you know what? You hit the nail right in the head. It's a lot of young pieces. I mean, yeah. Andrew Thomas has had his struggles, but he's played a lot better. Nick Gates is going in his 3rd year, but really his 1st year as a full-time starter. Matt Peart's been in there for a few reps. He was starting at tackle for, I think, 2 weeks, right, in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of turnover, and it's a lot of young guys. And just as you said, with this COVID-riddled offseason, it's not ideal, but they've improved vastly. It seemed like Colombo was actually doing a really good job coaching them up. The crux of all of this seems to be when Joe Judge brought in an O-line consultant, Dave DeGuglielmo. Guglielmo.
Yeah. From the Patriots, and the Patriots never had elite talent along the offensive line, but they always played above where the talent level should have been. So obviously, hey, if you're Marc Colombo and you've done as good a job as you have turning that unit around, I can see getting frustrated that the head coach is bringing in a consultant to go over the work that you've done.
And it seemed like from the reports that I had read that a lot of it stemmed from Andrew Thomas's struggles, and he's played better, but that's a Dave Gettleman issue. I mean, and I think you just get a little bit of jealousy looking at this tackle class. You see Jedrick Wills, you see Mekhi Becton, you see Tristan Wirfs.
And especially with Mekhi Becton literally playing in the same exact stadium, and Mekhi Becton may already be the best player on the New York Jets.
Tristan Wirfs might be the best right tackle in football this year. That guy's been that good. I mean, and that's not even to say that Andrew Thomas is a bust. He's played a lot better, and he's going into game 11 out of the bye. Like he'll be fine. Yeah. I'm sure he'll be fine. But look, I don't know what reports to believe or not, but what I do know is Joe Judge is a Northeast Philly guy. He is ground and pound and downhill football, and I'm sure there was a heated exchange between him and Colombo, and there were some choice words, because firing him midseason in the direction that the Giants are going is a very drastic move.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw, there was a video clip from the press conference after the game on Sunday, and one of the reporters' cell phones were going off, and he laced into the reporter, and you're starting to get this Belichick Parcells feel to Joe Judge, and I hope it doesn't escalate into something that gets out of hand. But look at those two coaches, the way that this feels, like I said, a Parcells feel, a Belichick feel, even though they have this demeanor about them, the players play for them. And you're starting to see that with Judge, and you're starting to hear that from the players about how much they are willing to play for Judge and put out on the line for him.
Absolutely. I mean, starting at 1-7, that was almost my fear of the Giants. I thought maybe they would shut down his coaching right away just because it's tough love. And a lot of guys nowadays don't react very well to that. But, I mean, give credit to the Giants players. I mean, it is not necessarily full of star-studded talent, but they have played a brand of football that is tough. I think they are very sound defensively. Daniel Jones is improving, and that's all you can ask for. At this juncture of where the Giants are, they're improving, which is much better than their counterparts in the division. I mean, they have a real chance of going to the playoffs this year.
Yeah, and it stems from the play of the defense, and I know we've mentioned it a bunch, the improvement that the defense is showing, and you have to give Patrick Graham, the new defensive coordinator, a lot of credit for putting them in situations to succeed. A lot of people, and rightly so, want to get on Dave Gettleman, but look at the signing of James Bradberry. Bradberry is probably the number one free agent signing, I mean, outside of Brady, in the NFL right now. I mean, he's become a shutdown corner. You watch his technique, and sometimes you wonder how he gets it done, but it's all about feel, because he doesn't always get his eyes back on the quarterback, but he reads the receiver he's covering so well, and knows and has such great timing with his pass breakups. Blake Martinez has evolved from just being the tackle machine that he was in Green Bay, but he's become much better in coverage, much better in reading the screen game than anyone could have imagined. So a lot of credit for the Giants' turnaround has to go to the defense, but it can't be said that the reason for the turnaround is because of the clean play of the offense.
Absolutely. I mean, we've kind of beat a dead horse, but that has been the focal point of Daniel Jones's career. It's just the turnovers, and he's gone 2 straight games without them now. His first 2 turnover-free games in 2020, back-to-back games, and he's playing much better. He completed 75% of his passes against the Eagles. I mean, he was in control of that game.
Yeah, and now they go into the bye, and after this fiasco, it's going to be they come out of the bye with Cincinnati. So it's a winnable game. We just need to see how they come out, and if this Colombo incident has anything to do with the impact of how they play the rest of the season. So, got a lot to talk about. Make sure you're following me on Twitter at rstern33. Derek is at Derek Mountain. Make sure to follow Back Sports Page on all social media at Back Sports Page, and check out the website for all the great content and archives of the great web shows and podcasts. We got a couple more news items to go over, then we'll get into our Week 10 takeaways and our Week 11 picks. One thing that I wanted to get in was what was the Saints quarterback situation. We saw what happened with Drew Brees, and you hate to see it on one of those driving with all your weight kind of plays. 5 broken, fractured ribs, collapsed lung, and you could sense something was wrong because Drew Brees never asks to come out of a game. And when you listen to Sean Payton after the game, you could tell it was a lot worse than what, because while it didn't look to be an excruciating hit, it doesn't have to be. It just has to be in the right place for bones that are that fragile with the ribs. And so now they're moving on to a combination because Sean Payton has this affinity with Taysom Hill, and I don't know why he.
I think he has something over Sean Payton. I swear. I have his usage is like one of the most curious mysteries in the NFL. I like him as a football player. I like him on special teams, what he does as an H-back tight end. I think he's fine in that role. He's a great athlete, but when they take out a Hall of Famer in Drew Brees in these crucial down and distance plays in 3rd and 3 goal line situations, like, what are you doing? I mean, and it's bailed him out sometimes because I think Taysom Hill is such a dynamic athlete, and I think Sean Payton is still an elite play caller, but like,
and now we get to see the impact that Drew Brees has had on Jameis Winston, whether or not learning from Drew Brees, and this was even something we talked about right before the end. I think we were talking about it on last week's show.
We were.
What impact does Drew Brees have on Jameis Winston in terms of taking care of the ball, making better decisions, or are we going to see 30 for 30 Jameis Winston like we saw last year? And I think obviously for a division winning standpoint, you want to see him take a little bit more of the Drew Brees approach to a game. But if you're a fantasy player, give me that 30 for 30 because you know he's going to get Michael Thomas involved more than Drew Brees has over the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, you're definitely right there. The thing that I'm interested to see with Jameis Winston in this offense, I always thought it was a weird fit and a weird signing. Now, no one questions Jameis's talent. I mean, his arm talent is elite. That's why he was the first overall pick, and he threw for 5,000 yards last year. But he's going from a vertical air raid scheme in Tampa Bay where he could let it rip with that receiving core in Tampa Bay. And he goes to a offense that prioritizes timing and quick game. And it is very much more mental than it was in Tampa Bay. It is all pre-snap reads. It is get it out fast. And I give a lot of credit to Jameis for taking a huge pay cut, taking a backup role, and being a student of the game, taking a backseat to Drew Brees and looking himself in the mirror and saying, I need to become a better decision maker if I want to last in this league and be a starter. And that is the crux of all his issues. I'm just curious to see if it's executed. It's been a half a season. He hasn't gotten reps in this offense between the offseason and playing in these games. So I think there are a lot of questions to be answered, and we'll get those answers very fast because the optimistic report was 2 to 3 weeks for Brees. I don't really see that happening. I think it's going to be much longer than that.
Yeah, I'm expecting more in the 4 to 6 at minimum. Just because, again, he's older. He's going to be more fragile. I'm assuming that Jameis Winston, and we saw Teddy Bridgewater go 5-0 with them last year when in the games that he had to fill in. So I'm not expecting Jameis Winston to just come in and lose 4 out of 5 games. I can see them winning 3 if it is a 4-week injury. If they can easily go 2-2, 3-1. And if they do, they're still well in the playoff picture.
And they have the tiebreaker over Tampa.
Right. So, I mean, I think that they're going to ask Jameis to reel it in a little bit to make sure that he becomes a little bit more of a game manager. And again, you made a great point. There may not be a bigger difference between 2 offensive head coaches than Bruce Arians and Sean Payton. You have the no risk it, no biscuit mentality with Bruce Arians, and Drew Brees throws 2-3 interceptions a year. I mean, the difference is astounding. So, and again, we know we're going to see Taysom Hill. Why, I don't know, but I think we're going to see him more than we saw him be utilized when Drew Brees was there. So it's going to be real interesting to see how they come out this week. They
got Atlanta.
Atlanta, and it was funny. I was listening to Matthew Berry's podcast, and they said, "Do you know who caught the last touchdown pass that Jameis Winston has thrown in the NFL?" And it was Deion Jones of the Atlanta Falcons on a pick 6.
Was it that was an overtime too to make it 30?
Yeah.
Oh my
God. That was
the most perfect ending to Jameis's 2019 season.
Yeah. Yeah. So, hey, with Jameis Winston and going up against that Falcons defense, though, it has been much better since the coaching change.
Absolutely. That's not going to be an easy game. That's not going to be an easy game. Even last year when Atlanta was down and out, they had lost to New Orleans, or they had beaten New Orleans in the Superdome. So it's a divisional game, and the Falcons are very, very much so improved under Raheem Morris. It's going to be a tough game for Jameis.
Yeah, I'm expecting a lot of points to be scored in this
Definitely.
game. 2 other things that I want to get into. One is the unfortunate second COVID breakout for the Las Vegas Raiders. This time it affects their defense. And it's a lot of members of the defense, including some big starting names: Cleveland Farrell, LaMarcus Joyner, Jonathan Abram, Malik Collins, Jonathan Hankins, Arden Key, and Kendall Vickers among the names that are on the COVID reserve list. There's, I think they said that it was either 7 or 8 players have started at least half the games this year for the Raiders. And this was going to be one of those prove-it games. They were the ones who handed the Kansas City Chiefs their only loss of the season. It was going to be another primetime game. The last time they had a Sunday night football game, it was moved to the 4:00 time slot because we didn't know if they were going to have a game because of the first COVID breakout. So they may have screwed themselves out of another Sunday night football game. But if you're Patrick Mahomes right now, you have to be licking your chops, and you know that he's going to come out guns a-blazing, coming off a bye, and with that chip on his shoulder for with the Raiders handing them their first loss.
Exactly. I mean, as if he didn't have enough ammunition already, as you just said. But now those defensive players aren't going to have a week of practice going up against primetime Chiefs with handing them their only loss. I mean, that's a formula for disaster. And it's tough because the forefront of the Vegas Raiders issues under John Gruden has been on the defensive side of the football. They've been very efficient offensively, sometimes lower scoring outputs than you'd like to see, but yardage-wise, they're the top of the league. Defensively, they have really struggled. But last week, they turned over Drew Lock 4 times. They doubled up their takeaways on the season. So they've been making some strides defensively, especially throughout the past couple of weeks. And it all started in that Chiefs game, that Chiefs victory that kind of came out of nowhere. But this is not a good recipe going into Sunday night.
Yeah, and especially because this wasn't like a Raiders defense that had been shutting people down. This is one of the worst defensive groups in the entire league, and now they're potentially without a bunch of their starters. So, if I haven't looked at the books, if you can get your money in while the line is still reasonable, yeah, I'm gonna have a lot invested in the Chiefs this weekend. The last thing before our Week 10 takeaways is going to be the Bears are bringing in another quarterback to try out with Nick Foles going down. Looks to be a pretty bad hip injury. Did you see the name that they brought in for a tryout?
Deshaun Kaiser.
Go Irish.
Oh
yeah, you know things are.
That turned out good for him.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I did not want to see. I didn't think he was ready. And to be honest, I still think he's not ready. Obviously, but well, you know what? He can't be worse than what the Bears have been throwing out so far this year. What was it? 103 yards. That
149 total yards, and they didn't score in the second half. It was just Cordero Patterson's kick return that opened the half. I haven't been a fan of Matt Nagy for the past 2 years, and I've come at his play calling a few times on this podcast, and Bill Lazor was worse. And a lot of it stems from personnel issues. Their O-line is a mess, and they have the worst quarterback room in NFL. But it's just tough because I actually think it's a promising receiving core. I mean, I think Allen Robinson has just been deprived of any QB play his entire career, and he is easily a top 10 receiver. Darnell Mooney has shined, and he has been one of the better fifth-round picks in all of the NFL. Anthony Miller's been invisible this year, but we've seen flashes since he's been in the league. But it's just the structure of this offense, they're never going to be exploited. They're never going to shine in this offense, those receivers.
Yeah, and it's funny because when we were talking about this game on the fantasy show on Sunday, or the Bears-Vikings game, I had said that the Bears hadn't allowed a QB1 performance since Week 11 of 2018. And you came out and said, and Kirk Cousins isn't going to be the one to do it. Kirk Cousins.
No, that was Tom.
Oh, that's right. It was Tom. Kirk Cousins was the QB 10 in standard scoring leagues. That's how awful this past week was in fantasy football.
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins, he did have. I mean, that first touchdown pass to Adam Thielen, and I mean, Adam Thielen just continues to not get enough respect. Uh, the dude just balls out.
And the
Um,
scary thing is they have a receiver that's better than him. Justin Jefferson is ridiculous.
he's so good.
Oh my
I
god.
mean, I had him at number 3. I had him a spot ahead of Ruggs in my wide receiver rankings going into. I had Judy, Lamb, Jefferson, Ruggs as my top 4. I loved Justin Jefferson in college, I thought he was going to have an impact. I didn't think it was going to be this quick or this impactful.
Yeah, he's been absolutely ridiculous. And my one knock on him was just that he had all his production from the slot in the high scoring offense in college football history. So whether that was from Joe Burrow or Jamar Chase, I wasn't really sure if how much of it really fell on Jefferson or if it was the system. He's played on the outside and he's fulfilled the role of Stephon Diggs admirably, especially as a rookie. And it's been unbelievable without an offseason what he's been able to do so far. It's really ridiculous.
Yep. All right. So let's get into our Week 10 takeaways. What's your first one?
I was going to look so smart last week. We were cut a little short. I was going to talk about the NFC parity, and I'm going to build off it. But I was going to bring up the Cardinals and the Rams, who were both in the wild card spots last week. Now that is not the case. The Cardinals are in first place of the NFC West, but both of them won. And they both beat 2 very good teams. And there are 6 teams in the NFC that can make the Super Bowl that are capable of it. I think there is a little bit of a hierarchy. There's a tier structure to the NFC. I think they're the top 3 in my perspective are Green Bay, who's your current 1 seed, New Orleans, if Drew Brees is Drew Brees back in the playoffs,
and the Giants, right?
Yeah, the Giants exactly. And I'll put Seattle 3rd tentatively just because they have Russell Wilson. I mean, their defense is awful, but Russell Wilson, ever since that Arizona game, hasn't really looked right. He's had 7 interceptions in his past 4 games. Now he's 2nd in the league with 10 picks in the year, but that's not indicative of Russell Wilson. I think he'll turn it around, but they do put a lot on his plate. But in the playoffs, he's capable of being anybody. And then I think the other 3 teams are Tampa, LA, and Arizona. All of these teams I could easily see running the table and going to the Super Bowl. This year, it's different than other years. One, home field is not going to be nearly as big a factor just because of who knows where we're going to be as a country and as a league come playoff time. But depending on the city, there might not even be fans or it'll be very limited in the playoffs. So it's not going to be that same home field advantage that we're used to in the playoffs. And the bye structure, the 1 seed is the only team that is going to get a bye week. So that could be a gigantic advantage for someone like the Green Bay Packers right now. You get rested up. But also you might run into one of these teams in the second round in that divisional round. And I wouldn't want to play a Rams or now the Seahawks are a wild card team right now. I wouldn't want to play them in the second round. I mean, one of these teams is going to be able to play the NFC East in the first round, and then they'll have to beat 2 more teams to get to the Super Bowl. And I think this year, more than any that I can remember for the past little bit, it's very possible. The last time we saw a wild card team make the Super Bowl was 2010 in Green Bay. So it's been a really long time, but I think this year it's very possible in the NFC.
Yeah, we've always heard that it's not about how good you are, how good you've played. It's how good you play at the right time. It's all about getting hot at the right time, not how well you've played over the course of the season. And any year, if any year was to signify that as much, it has to be this year, because as you said, and there are going to be 6 teams plus the NFC East champion. But yeah, those other 6 teams can all have a stake, saying that they've got a legit shot to win the Super Bowl. So my first takeaway is, and I know that this may upset a lot of people, and especially they're coming off a 26-point victory against a division opponent. But the Pittsburgh Steelers continue to be, in my eyes, one of the worst 9-0 teams that we've ever seen. I don't have the record offhand, but you look at the teams that they have played so far, and it's just a who's who of some of the worst teams in the league. And I'm just not as impressed as some people are with the Steelers. You give me, I mean, this is supposed to be one of the best defensive units in the league. If you're one of the best defensive units in the league, you shouldn't have holes in your defense like you do in the secondary. Wide receivers continue to put up decent games against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, look at even T. Higgins. I mean, they got blown out this past week. T. Higgins still had a really good week. Tyler Boyd still put up decent numbers. I mean, it was to me, it was the Cincinnati Bengals' inefficiency about scoring the ball more than it was the Pittsburgh Steelers shutting them down. And the worst part about it for me is that they're still not going to say, yeah, they have the Ravens coming up, but the rest of their season record, the rest of their season is still filled with teams that are either around 500 or under 500. They have a game against the Browns, and say what you will against about the Browns, they still don't think they're a great team either. Is going to be Week 16 again against the Colts. I mean, you want to talk about old time football right there. That's going to be the one of the defensive battles of the season. So, my first takeaway is, even though they're coming off a big time division win, I'm still not as impressed with the Steelers as a lot of people are.
Yeah, they've been scraping by. Until this week, they've really been bailed out by some late game heroics and just some lucky draws. And here we are. They're 9-0. But like you said, I mean, strength of schedule has not been impressive. And the structure of that defense, they bring more pressure than every team except for Baltimore and Tampa Bay. So, as you said, it's going to be a leaky secondary. I don't think they've really had a QB2 fully expose that yet. But, man, they run into Patrick Mahomes, a guy as good as Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, who is so good against the blitz, you can't get away with that stuff. Yeah, they'll get their sacks, maybe their big X plays every now and then, because they have a ton of talented guys. But that is not a formula to sustain for an entire season.
I'm sorry. We just had a little bit of a technical issue. I didn't get the last of what you just said.
Oh, I was just saying, with how much pressure they bring, it exposes that back end, and they haven't had a QB really take advantage of it. But they run into a guy like Mahomes in the playoffs, who is so good against the blitz. They're not going to get away with the stuff they're getting away with now. I mean, it's not a sustainable formula for success.
Absolutely. What's your second takeaway?
I want to talk about this rookie class going off of Justin Jefferson. These tackles that we're seeing, they have lived up to the hype. This wide receiver class, these tackles, the first 4 tackles, the first 3 after Andrew Thomas, but even Andrew Thomas has played sparingly better over the past few weeks. But even the depth of this draft in this offseason, where there was so much uncertainty, no preseason games, no OTAs, no rookie mini camps, and so many of these rookies, especially these D2, D3 guys, are making such a big impact. I mean, guys like DeAndre Swift, now we're finally seeing unleashed. T. Higgins, that Ryan just mentioned, Claypool, Michael Wanu, Solomon Kinley, day 3 pick on the Dolphins, has been unbelievable in the interior. I mean, Jeremy Chin, Julian Blackman, the list goes on and on. And it's a really good class. And that is part of my takeaway. It is fully lived up to the hype. We're seeing Herbert go above and beyond what I thought he would be, and I think what a lot of people thought he would be already. Joe Burrow has delivered and is a premier rookie of the year candidate, as we thought he would be. But I think this might be kind of the structure from here on out and how impactful these rookies can be in the future. We're seeing more college concepts and schematics carried into the program. I mean, perfect example, Carolina and Joe Brady and how much success he's had from LSU a year ago. He's a prime candidate for a head coaching job next year. I wouldn't be surprised if he was a head coach in 2021. But he's just one example. I mean, Kingsbury, the list goes on and on, but these guys are just much more prepared. Drew Brees said it before the Monday night game when they played the Chargers. These rookie quarterbacks are much more prepared. And I think that goes for just about every single position. We're seeing this turnover of these college coaches matriculated into the pro game. And these rookies are playing at a high level out of the gate. So I think this is the new norm now in the NFL, more so than ever. Cheap talent and drafting well is at the forefront of winning football. And that has to be the highest priority of any football team. Look at the Miami Dolphins. We talk about them every single week. The production they've gotten from those rookies has been remarkable. And they're 6-3, and they really have a chance to steal the AFC East.
Yeah, and again, you have to look at, like, there are times where we hear for years about this one particular group in the NFL draft that is just so superior to other ones in some other years. And we've been hearing about the 2020 wide receivers since 2017, 2018. And for those of you that played especially in dynasty football, fantasy football leagues, but even in just redrafts, when you hear about these amazing groups for so long, pay attention to those, because the last time we heard about a wide receiver group that was going to be outstanding, it was in 2014, and you know what? That was outstanding. I mean, so we heard about the 2017 running back class. I mean, you only had Ezekiel Elliott and Christian McCaffrey in that class. It was, I mean, Zeke was 16, not 17.
Was Kamara in 17 as well?
Yes, yeah, Kamara, McCaffrey. Was that? I think that may have been Fournette.
Yep. It was.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's how good. I mean, Leonard Fournette is now considered one of the busts of that, and Leonard Fournette has still been pretty good in the league.
He just shouldn't have been a top 5 pick.
Oh no.
Exactly. No, I mean, it's not even a knock on Leonard Fournette. It was just a bad pick by the Jaguars, taking a running back that high.
Yeah, especially when they had so many other things they could have filled. So my second takeaway is we may have seen the game of the year already. The way that second half, but especially the fourth quarter and the final minutes of the Cardinals-Bills game was just, it was such a pleasure to watch. We saw two of the young budding superstars in the league, and with Kyler Murray and Josh Allen, just put on an absolute show. Ball and throw game-winning touchdowns in the final minute of the game, and I mean DeAndre Hopkins. Just that picture of him going up there with the three Bills defenders and just outleaping them, and you can see the jump man just peeking out from the abyss to grab it. It was a good week for Nike selling wide receiver gloves.
I was gonna say they need to give DeAndre Hopkins a nice royalty for that commercial that will come out very soon.
Oh, absolutely. But and then what I loved most was seeing the rest of the league, and especially seeing the defenders just coming out and saying, yeah, you're all finding out what we already knew about DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, I think he wears like a size 6XL glove. I think that's what they said. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. I think they said that he set a record for hand size at the combine.
It's no surprise he doesn't drop anything. I mean, he's unbelievable. I think besides Devontae Adams, he's the next best receiver in the game right now. And I don't think Stephon Diggs is even that far behind that group either. And we saw him – what we thought was the game winner 30 seconds before.
Yeah, Diggs actually leads the league in receiving yards this year.
I mean,
as crazy it sounds, but you have Devontae Adams, who missed 2.5 games.
Yeah.
We saw 2 down games from DeAndre Hopkins because teams were double and triple teaming him. And then we have Kyler Murray, who we've been talking a lot about, and we even had our midseason awards last week. I think we did a disservice not even mentioning Kyler Murray in the MVP, but he's leapt up into the conversation.
Oh, absolutely. He's the first. I mean, we saw Lamar Jackson throw for 3,000 and rush for 1,000. Kyler Murray's gonna one up and become the first quarterback ever to throw for 4,000 and run for 1,000. It's absolutely ridiculous what he's doing in Arizona this year.
Yeah, they were saying that he's on pace to break Patrick Mahomes' record in 2018 for fantasy points by a quarterback. It just shows you what a running quarterback can do in fantasy. And, I mean, he's the best running back on the team. And I don't know if you saw the one rushing touchdown that he had on the RPO.
Yeah,
he just made it so easy. Oh my goodness, did he make that look easy?
What do you think his 40 would have been? Because he didn't run one in the combine.
Yeah, for high 4.3s.
It's just his acceleration. He gets to top speed so fast, and his little legs are just moving by everybody, making him look slow in the NFL. Like the dude, I haven't seen a runner like him before.
Yeah, he would have been in the 4.3s. I would assume mid to high 4.3s. But yeah, what an ending that was, and it's going to be tough for a game to surpass that as game of the year. So real quickly, what do you have as your third Week 10 takeaway?
I'm thinking Doug Peterson might be in more trouble than people are realizing. I think the clock may be ticking for Dougie, and I think there's a low point in his tenure in Philly. He came in 2016. They went 7-9 under Wentz, and there were some obstacles that year, but it was a rebuilding year, and they had a lot of hope and optimism going in 2017, and they had won the Super Bowl remarkably. But the more you watch this team, it's looking more and more like a fluke. They have an aging, overpaid defense that underachieves and underperforms, and they have an offense that hasn't built any continuity, and their franchise quarterback has simply regressed in a dramatic way. And you don't really see it in the fashion that Carson Wentz is regressing in, especially after 2017. As an Eagles fan, I had such high hopes for him, and the injury obviously was a huge setback, but he just has not been the same. He hasn't looked the same. And I think some of that blame has to be attributed to Doug Peterson. At 2017, he had an interesting quote that has come back in the forefront of the media. He proclaimed that he would be married to Carson Wentz, that he was tied to the hip. His tenure was tied to the hip with his progression. And first they signed him to a huge contract, and they can't really let go of Carson through 2022. And the guy that goes before the franchise quarterback is usually the coach. I think Howie Roseman has a big part in the way this team is right now. It's just a team deprived of talent. And the talent that they did have, that core that they won it with in 2017, is much older, and it's not the same players. And it does not get easy for the Eagles. The next 5 games are against teams with at least 6 wins. Every team has at least 6 wins. And you look back on their wins, and they have not been impressive. I mean, we talked about it, but Evan Ingram is a catch away from sweeping the Giants, and they should have won that game. They beat Ben DiNucci, and they beat Nick Mullins and the JV version of the 49ers. They haven't put together a clean game, let alone a clean half. It's been sloppy football. So I would not be surprised if this continues, if they continue what that Giants game was, which was sloppy football, uninspired after a bye week, and that riddles into the last 7 games of the year. I would not be surprised if Doug Peterson was firmly on the hot seat going into 2021.
What was it? 0 for 12 they were on third downs?
Or 0 for 9.
11? Was it 0 for 9?
And that was the first time they haven't converted a third down since 04. It's the first time in the NFL a team hasn't converted a third down a game this year.
Yeah.
Can't happen.
No, and there were plays that could have worked. And I've seen enough Giants-Eagles games to know that Carson Wentz can make all of those kind of throws. And there were at least 3 or 4 of those non-converted third downs that he had an open receiver that he either spiked into the ground or overthrew by 6. Some of these plays he didn't even give his receivers a chance to make a play on some of these, and plays that could have been conversions. And I had never seen, especially the Eagles tend to be one of the teams that have been better coming out of byes. I thought in recent years, and I thought I had seen that that Peterson only had 1 loss in his career, even as a coordinator coming out of a bye. Yeah, it was. Hey, I'll take it. I don't know. I don't know how much of it was based on the Giants' defensive game plan, but he just did not look comfortable throwing the ball the entire game.
Absolutely, and it wasn't even close. I mean, in all 3 phases, the Eagles were beat handily, offensively, defensively, and special teams. It was just a really sloppy game, and they were just unprepared. They looked unprepared and outcoached in every way to me.
Yep. My third takeaway is regarding a team that I had been really high on in the preseason, and have been hit or miss, but they've looked much better over the past couple of weeks, and a lot of it has to do with the play of their quarterback, which I know I haven't given him a lot of credit, and it's Phillip Rivers and the Indianapolis Colts. Rivers is averaging over 260 yards a game, completing almost 69% of his passes, and he has a receiver group that until this past week, with the emergence of Michael Pittman against the Tennessee Titans, had not had a receiver step up to warrant number 1 targets. But he's still been very efficient. They have a very good offensive line. They use the hot hand approach with their running backs, which, as a huge fan of Jonathan Taylor and what he could be with this offensive line, they just don't trust him yet for some reason. But we've seen big games from Jordan Wilkins. We've seen big games from Nyheim Hines. and Hines had the huge game this past week. Nyheim Hines, I don't know if you saw this. It's only him and Alvin Kamara. They're the only two running backs who lead their teams in receptions this year.
Wow. That's pretty impressive. And that's not surprising either, just given Philip Rivers' style and what you just said. None of the receivers have really stepped up until Pittman this past week.
Right, and you look what he's had in the past. He's had, at the very beginning of his career, he had LaDainian Tomlinson to check down to. And he's had Michael Turner. He's had Austin Eckler. He's had Darren Sproles. Look at all of these guys who he's been able to use as exploits to get in the right positions. And Nyheim Hines is he's a perfect fit for what Philip Rivers wants to do in that passing game. So I think we got to give Rivers a hell of a lot more credit than he's been getting so far this year.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
Sorry, I was just going to say, adding on to my Eagles narrative, Frank Reich has done a great job with Philip Rivers. He's catered perfectly to Philip Rivers' deficiencies almost, but when he does throw down the field, he connects. At least with Pittman this past Thursday, they executed it perfectly.
Yep. All right, time to get into our Week 11 picks, and this is going to be a real fun one because we always do the Thursday night, Sunday night, and Monday night games, plus the Giants and Eagles games. Giants are on a bye, so we'll only do the Eagles game. But the three primetime games are three of the better games on paper that we're going to have, especially as a group of three. It's not going to get better than this week. And it starts off with a great Thursday night matchup. We can only hope that we get something similar to the first time these two teams matched up, and it's the Seahawks hosting the Cardinals. Both teams are at 6-3. The Cardinals are 3-point favorites, and it's a 57.5 point over under.
I mean, I like the over in this game. I do. I mean, between these two quarterbacks, I don't doubt that they both hit 30 again. Each team hits over 30. I like the Seahawks in this game. I think that they will bounce back. They've lost 3 or 4. It's been a tough rep for them, but I expect them to take the division lead once again. And I think it's going to be really hard for the Cardinals to get up after that emotional win on Sunday. I think it's really tough to get back up on Thursday for this game. And I know it's divisional, but I just think the Seahawks have more to play for right now, just given how much they've struggled lately. So I like the Seahawks in this, and I like the over.
Yeah, I mean, they put up 71 points in the first time that they played each other. You know that you're going to see a more spirited effort from DK Metcalf, and I know you. I'm talking about in terms of offensive output, because the first time they played, obviously he had which now may have gotten outshone by DeAndre Hopkins, but that was in running for play of the year, his chasing down of Budda Baker. But he's going to get another dose of Patrick Peterson, and I think he's going to be especially up for this game, because there was the narrative that that he wasn't able to get open against Patrick Peterson, and that's why they relied on Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett is banged up, but it looks like he's going to play, at least according to Pete Carroll. It does look like they're getting back Carlos Hyde, which is a big benefit, because the combination of DJ Dallas and Alex Collins have not been able to put up any sort of an effort that we've seen from Hyde, and they may even get a limited Chris Carson back as well. So that when they have the ability to run the ball, it helps Russell Wilson out so much, because defenders just don't care about defending the run right now against the Seattle Seahawks, and they're just pinning their ears back and going after Russ. And Russ takes sacks. That's something he's always done. He will always try and wait till the last minute to make the right throw, and he takes sacks. And teams, and we've seen from the Bills and the Rams the past 2 weeks, the success they've had was they've been able to get after Russ. They're definitely going to have an improved run game. I think we see a bounce back effort from the Seahawks, but I think that the Cardinals actually continue to ride the lightning. Kyler Murray is just playing at such an elite level right now. The lack of a pass rush for the Cardinals does worry me a little bit in terms of how teams have been able to be successful against the Seahawks. But I actually like how the Cardinals have played. I'm going to lay the 3 points and also take the over.
I like it.
So then we move on to the Philadelphia Eagles traveling out to Cleveland. Let's see. I think the Browns are showing right now to be a 3-point favorite and a 47.5 point over under.
Well, we got to check the weather report because the last 2 games of Cleveland have been absolute just disastrous weather for offensive output. I still like Cleveland just because with Nick Chubb and Wyatt Teller back in the mix, this offense is elite running the football. They dominate the line of scrimmage, and the combination of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt is very dangerous. The Eagles haven't been nearly as stout against the run as they usually are. They aren't giving me any reason for an upset. I do think that the Eagles have something in them to maybe almost trap a team within the next couple of weeks because it's such a brutal schedule, but I don't see it this week just because the Browns are in the thick of a wild card race. They get back 2 of their best players. They're starting to hit their stride a little bit. And the Eagles are down and out. I mean, as I just said, there haven't been any promising aspects to take away from this team in any facet of the game, defense, special teams, offense. So I expect the Browns to handle them in this one.
All right, so I just looked up the weather, and it's a 60% chance of rain, only 9-mile-an-hour winds. So it doesn't look like weather's going to play too much of a factor. But the one thing that I noticed this past week, and it's something that we talked about on the fantasy show as something that could very well happen, and the bringing back of Nick Chubb is going to make Kareem Hunt more effective, and it was exactly that. And I mean, Kareem Hunt, when given the reins as the primary ball carrier, struggled at times. He was very hit or miss. He had a good game, then he had a bad game, a good game and a bad game. But now, and I think the weather had a lot to do with the fact that he also had, I think 19 carries and over 100 yards, and that was as the second option. I don't think we're necessarily going to see that many rushing attempts, especially with the Eagles are one of the better run defending teams. But I mean, Wayne Gallman was able to have a decent game. Even Alfred Morris even had a couple decent runs.
It's like we had not seen Daniel Jones run zone read and run for 90 yards and stumble against us the first time. He had 64 yards in the touchdown.
Yeah. I don't know if Daniel Jones already has the most rushing yards of a Giants quarterback in their career.
Wow.
He's 24 games into his career.
Well, that makes sense. Eli Manning, Kerry Collins, Phil Simms. That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable what and as a Giants fan, like you said, you're rattling off these names. I mean, I've never seen a quarterback run the way that that Daniel Jones has been able to, and he should have even had another one that that another touchdown that got called back.
Yep.
I mean, it was a penalty. There was a reason why he scored. Andrew Thomas put the I think it was Fletcher Cox in a legit headlock. It was that was a hold. But the play of the Cleveland Browns offensive line has been the biggest reason for the offensive turnaround. We need to see Baker step up in order for them to take a leap forward. We need to see Baker take the next step. We know that I'm not the biggest Baker fan. I don't trust him, but he has enough weapons, even without Odell Beckham there, that he's now more comfortable about spreading the ball out instead of having to focus in on Beckham. If the weather does seem to hold out, which it looks like it, like I said, it shouldn't be too much of a factor. This is a secondary that can be had. So this will be a very interesting game. I am also going to take the Browns, and I will take the over at 47.5. If the weather does look like it's going to be more of a factor, keep an eye on that. We can look to take the under. We actually have a question from one of our listeners. What is the best thing about the Steelers this year? And I mean, I to me, it's pretty clear, and that's the play of the wide receivers. They have 3 legit options that could be number ones on most teams, but we've seen this quick development from a 3rd round wide receiver in Chase Claypool. Deontay Johnson is the number 1 receiver on this team, and now that Deontay Johnson is the number 1, when did Juju have his best years? It was when he was the number 2 to Antonio Brown. So now that I think Deontay Johnson is getting the bulk of teams number 1 cornerbacks. I think that the wide receiver play has been the best thing about the Steelers this year.
I think that's a great point, and they complement each other really well, especially with Chase Claypool in the mix now. He's that big body receiver that Big Ben hasn't really had over the past few years. Deontay Johnson's a wizard route runner, and Juju's kind of a mix of both. He's dynamic with the ball in his hands, and he's also a dynamic route runner. I'll go with the play of the defensive line, though. They lead the league in sacks. And they have 3 game changers on that defensive line between TJ Watt, Stephon Tuitt, and Cam Hayward. I mean, it doesn't get better than their defensive line. They will bring pressure against any offensive line that they play, and they've wreaked havoc against some of the best, including the Cleveland Browns from a couple weeks ago. So that is a constant that I think will always be there for Steeler games, is bringing pressure against opposing quarterbacks. What I worry about and what we had talked about earlier is the back end. And with how much they blitz, it leaves them susceptible to big plays. And I don't think it's really been exploited yet from the quarterbacks they played against, but I worry about their prospects in the postseason. But that defensive line is the best in football for what I think.
And I think this question also, best defense in fantasy, you got to assume that it's the Steelers with their ability to get after the quarterback and create turnovers. That's been the best thing. That part of the reason why they are the best. I also really like the Colts, and especially down the stretch. After this week, they have Green Bay this week. After this week, they've got a couple of juicy matchups, and also the Dolphins. The Dolphins have a real juicy stretch coming up.
With Darius Leonard in the mix, the only time they really didn't look elite was without Darius Leonard for those 2 games in the middle of the season. But when he's in the lineup, you hit the nail right in the head. This is one of the elite bunches in the NFL.
Yep. All right. So let's get back to the picks, and now we have Sunday Night Football, which we hope is going to remain Sunday night. Like I said, we've seen the Raiders outbreaks move around games in terms of the Sunday night matchups. Right now, it is in Vegas. The Chiefs are 7-point favorites, and it's a 57-point over/under.
I mean, this one's pretty easy. I think you're going to agree with me, but I'm going to take the Chiefs. Just revenge game, primetime Chiefs. The COVID-riddled defense that the Raiders are experiencing this week does not help at all. But what we're seeing in Vegas is almost a copycat, a clone of that Chiefs offense with how much speed they have on the perimeter between Ruggs and Aguilar and a dynamic tight end and Darren Waller. It's very similar to that Chiefs offense, and we've seen Derek Carr deliver the ball down the field at a much better rate than he has in his career this year. But there's no way they're beating these guys twice. I just don't see it. I think Patrick Mahomes has had this game circled since they lost. I think he's going to go nuts. I think the Chiefs win big in this one.
Yeah, I'm actually going to take the under. I'm going to take the Chiefs and the Chiefs to cover, but I think it's going to be the Chiefs coming out and making a statement on defense. We've seen in the past, and especially this past week, when the Raiders are in positive game scripts, Josh Jacobs is able to excel. And he had a great game this past week against Denver. I don't think that he's going to be able to have an effect, because I'm just expecting the Chiefs to come out and from the opening kickoff are going to be set out, and they're going to really want to make a statement with playing against the Raiders, who gave them their only loss. So I am going to take the Chiefs, and I'm going to take them to cover and take the under. And finally, the Monday night game, and hey, this should be one hell of a matchup on Monday night. We got the Rams heading across country to Tampa Bay. Right now, the looks like the the Buccaneers are 4-point favorites. Line is set at 47.5.
These are 2 of the most balanced teams in the NFL. I mean, and 2 of the more forgiving teams in terms of metrics. In terms of EPA, which is expected points added, the Bucs are the first-ranked team in the NFL, and the Rams are the third-ranked team in the NFL. And some people listening right now might be scratching their heads and wondering why, because some of them they both had low points and laid some eggs certain matchups, but they don't really have huge flaws that are exploited each week. They're both pretty sound offensively and defensively. You can nitpick, and yeah, Jared Goff's not the best quarterback, but he's played turnover-free sound football this year. He's executed that system to a T. They've gotten great production defensively outside of Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald. I mean, we've seen Darius Williams play at a very high level at the other cornerback position, and the emergence of Leonard Floyd. He was labeled as a bust after his disappointing stint in Chicago, but he has been a sack artist in LA this season under new defensive coordinator Brandon Staley. There's a versatile multiple defense, and then you have the Bucs. They started to look like the Bucs we were starting to see. They had their horrible matchup against the Saints 2 weeks ago, but they started to look like themselves again last week against Carolina. I am going to go with the Bucks tentatively on this one. I think they're a little more complete and better all around, but I think it's going to be a really tightly contested and fun football game to watch.
Yeah, and the one way that you beat Tom Brady is by getting to him. You putting pressure on him. He succeeds when he has clean pockets. And if there's one thing that Aaron Donald makes sure a quarterback doesn't have, is clean pockets. This can be just like it can be my special. I can easily see it going where the Buccaneers win, but the Rams cover and taking the under. That's been my special this year. It's hit twice. This should be a really good game. Two outstanding defenses, which are going up against two offenses who are loaded with talent. Does the fact that the Rams tend to not play great on the East Coast have? I think that can have an effect. I know it's a Monday night, so the travel won't be as harsh, and the timing won't matter as much. I know we tend to see West Coast teams that travel to the East Coast and play the 1 o'clock games on the East. Those are the ones that struggle the most. But now they're playing on Monday night, so that shouldn't be a big factor. I just think this is going to be a great game. It's going to be tough to break it down because you just have a really good offense going up against a really good defense, and another really good offense going up against a really good defense. I think that what may, and it's fine because they may not have the best unit in the league, but what may make the biggest factor is the offensive lines. And I think that the Buccaneers offensive line right now, especially with the Rams losing Andrew Whitworth to an injury this past week, I hope that this isn't the last we see of Andrew Whitworth. The guy deserves a better send-off than that.
Thank God he didn't tear his ACL. Yeah. That's what it looked like.
Yeah, looks like that it's an MCL. I've had an MCL issue, and I'm certainly nowhere near the physical specimen that Andrew Whitworth is. But yeah, it was about 2 months until I was back, and so I can see it being a 6-week thing for him. Hopefully that's all it is, and he can get back in time for the playoffs. But the Buccaneers' offensive line has been playing really well. So I think that's going to be the mitigating factor as to why I'll say the Bucs win, the Rams cover, and take the under.
I like it.
All right, so that yeah. All right, so that is going to wrap it up for this week. Again, make sure that you are checking out backsportspage.com for all the great content, including you got your power rankings going up.
Yes, I do.
All right. So make sure you're checking out Derek's power rankings and all the archives to all the great shows. I know the Fourth and Long podcast has been doing such a great job hammering out the this crazy season that we've seen in college football this year. Ian Book for Heisman. Yeah, had to get it in. All right. Follow Derek on Twitter at Derek Mountain. I am at rstern33. Follow Backsports Page at Backsports Page on all social media. And Derek, let's do this again Sunday for the fantasy show.
I'm in. Let's do it.
All right. Have a great one, and we will catch you on Sunday.